So we're back with the no fluff unstuck live stream. Welcome back. Happy Monday. I hope you guys had a great weekend. Had a great Mother's Day. Shout out to all the moms out there that are handling your business. And today's episode, I was going to do I had a couple of different ideas. And so I'm going to run them down, but we're going to condense the nonsense and jump into it. And then we'll break this down and I'll tell you what this thing is. Okay, so I had a couple of different ideas for today's live stream. Initially, I wanted to do um, something regarding ADHD and marketing. And basically, how to market your own business when you have ADHD, because it does pose some specific challenges as a solo entrepreneur, or if you're in charge of doing the social media marketing with your business. And so, decided I was going to do that. And then I sat down and thought about it and realized I have yet to declaratively address what this platform is supposed to be addressing. And so I'm kind of putting the ADHD stuff specifically for people that are marketing their own business. I'm putting that conversation on hold in favor of this one. Um, the title of this is Focus is Overrated, Real Success for ADHD Minds. I wanted to do a live stream that on one hand, engaged entrepreneurs with ADHD, and on the other hand, engaged professionals with ADHD. And just so that we can have some conversations about some of the unique challenges posed by uh, ADHD when when you're in charge of stuff. Like that's the reality of it. Um, ADHD is very good at making you think that the only place you could be is a frontline worker and not have any other responsibilities besides the specific tasks. And it can wreak havoc when it comes to managing of people and tasks. Um, and there's a couple different layers to it. I know that specifically when we're talking about managing people and tasks, um, I know from just running a business that, and also being a supervisor, that there are managers of people and there are managers of processes. And the biggest disconnect you'll find is when you put somebody who is supposed to be managing processes in charge of managing people and vice versa. And for an ADHDer, that can instantly drop you into a world of overwhelm. I am great with managing people. Okay. I'm great with high concept stuff, but my mind does not deal well with going in a straight line when it comes to processes. My wife will tell you that I am Mr. I will jump in here and I will jump in here and start putting this thing together and read the instructions later once I get stuck. And so I don't think in a linear line. And so a lot of times I have an idea of a concept that I want to put in place and have an idea of a process that I want to implement, but my mind doesn't go down. It doesn't follow that straight line of do this, then do this, then do this, then do this. Now, if I memorize it, I can implement it. But if it's something new, it's going to take a while for me to work off of a script in terms of a process. Even when I do these live streams, I am mostly unscripted. I have an outline that I use, and that's about it. I don't have specific words that I use. I just kind of go off my outline to keep me in a path, a general direction, but I don't have this stuff pre-planned as much. Okay. So my entire life story, and I'll give you my background. I am a business and marketing coach, and I also run a marketing agency called I Sell Words. I work with smaller businesses, and my goal, I kind of pivoted because I want to teach people how to manage their own marketing as opposed to doing it for them, because I feel like there's more oomph when somebody knows how to do it themselves, and then they can hire people that are aligned with the marketing message that they want to put out there. So I'm pivoting more into teaching people how to manage their own marketing. I also co-own a basketball training business. I handle all the marketing and media and website and billing and stuff like that. And so both of these businesses are bootstrapped, Both of them were started with no seed capital. We didn't take any outside investments or anything, and both have been running for about 10 years. And for better or worse, we're still standing and we're still here. We survived pandemics, we survived economic downturns and the whole nine. And so I feel like I'm uniquely qualified to talk about some of the things I'm talking about because I've done this the entire time with the ADHD brain that I was born with. And so I have stuff that works for me and I wanted to share it with the world. And so that's what this live stream is. Okay. If you have any questions or comments, please, 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 please do not hesitate. Don't hesitate to drop them in the chat. The only way this thing works is if you guys participate and I can answer your questions in the stream. It doesn't benefit anybody if I am just kind of talking around things and people aren't quite knowing exactly where I'm going with it and they're not able to hop in and say, hey, Bryon, what about this specific thing that impacts me? You dig? So I do need y'all to, if y'all got questions or comments or if something resonates with you, give me a shout, give me a like, whatever. I need to edit my audience here on Facebook because StreamYard is a disaster when it comes to that. All right, so Facebook should be seeing me now too. All right, so when I was managing, this is my first supervisor gig. And I was managing a group home. And I had essentially kind of helped build this thing from the ground up. I designed the program and everything else. And there's a story that goes along with it that ended up really aligning with my ADHD, but also some toxic management stuff that I probably will discuss a little bit of, but I'm not going to get into the weeds of it. So my shelter specifically housed kids that weren't really considered amenable to like in a regular residential environment. They weren't amenable to that. And our job was to bring them in, get them caught up academically, get them caught up medically, get them caught up with their medication management and psychiatric meds and all that other stuff, and allow them to reintegrate back into society. And we were kind of a way station. We took on kids that nobody else could. And my kids were coming from the higher level of juvenile detention in the state of Nebraska where I'm at. Okay. It's my first management job. And when I came in, I had read all these books about task management. I was going to jump in there with the getting things done method, where you have like 32 folders and all this other stuff. Okay. I think it was 45 folders. Regardless, it was this this organization system that was really going to turbocharge what I did. I was on too high a dosage of the wrong ADHD medication. And it would put me on hyper-focusing rabbit holes. And so one of the benefits of it was when I was working, I normally could work when the house started getting quiet. That's around the time when the kids went to bed. And that's when I did a lot of my administrative stuff and had meetings with my staff to check in with them and whatnot. I would stay until my kids went to bed. And that's the reason why I was able to have the quietest program, even though I had the toughest group of kids. Okay. I had the toughest group of kids, but I had the quietest program because I would stay until the kids went to bed. The other supervisors, and it was their prerogative. 10 o'clock rolled around, they're punching and they're handing off to the overnight staff and they're out. I'm there. I'm there to work with my overnight staff for the first part of their shift and make sure everything's settled. And so for me, that's how I managed my house. And one of the pieces of feedback I got, because I don't think a lot of times the management or my supervisor quite understood. And part of me is like, she was kind of new-ish. I think she was probably about my age. I couldn't tell, but I feel like she was still kind of new-ish to management. And as such, that meant that she was still figuring out pieces of being somebody's boss in a residential context. So anyway, basically what happened was I got pulled into a meeting and I got feedback from my boss, because they saw that I would stay. My shift was over at, you know, 10:30, but I would normally be there till about 11:30, wrapping up stuff, getting things done. And I got feedback because she's like, you need to do a time study and you need to manage your time better and all this other stuff. And so instantly that puts me on the defensive, because that puts me on the back foot, because it's almost like I felt like I was getting punished or singled out because I was really, really, really hyper committed to doing the job. And I found something that I found a way of task management that actually worked for me. And so I felt like the whole conversation came down, I honestly felt like, um, I was kind of getting picked on. And hindsight being 2020, it was out of concern because they thought that I was going to burn myself out wholly committing to this job on that level. But what I was actually doing was I was figuring out a way to make the job work for me. And then I was kind of working backwards so that I could extract myself out of my program and start leaving on time. But I had to figure out a way to make it work for me. And so I was kind of toying around with different processes, and I was really active with my staff. I kind of worked side by side with them when the kids are active, because that's the way that we manage the house. I got in trouble for it. I got in trouble because I worked too long. And it wasn't like I was paid hourly. I was a salaried employee, but I got in trouble with from my supervisor, because in their estimation, in their opinion, I worked too long. Go figure. And so that's when I started realizing, because that was really um there have been other instances where I'm like, okay, the ADHD is problematic, but this was really kind of a unique thing, because in my mind, I'm doing the right thing. I stay till the kids go to bed. That was my background. And it's like, my name might as well be on this shelter. And so I take that degree of ownership. And in their mind, it was just showing that I was off task. And it really wasn't the case. I was hyper focusing because I enjoyed running residential homes and residential programs. That was my happy spot, um, and everything that entailed. Even when kids were throwing fire extinguishers and punching holes in the wall and stuff. Okay, so chat, raise your hand if you ever felt like your brain was built for something bigger, but the world wasn't built for your brain. Give me a like if that connects with you. Drop a like and let me know if that is something, if that is a true statement for you. Okay. A lot of times when you have ADHD, and depending on what kind you have, because mine is primarily inattentive, and that is not great for task oriented jobs, because I daydream a lot. And that's where my mind goes if the subject matter is not engaging. Now, I had learned how to skim information and listen enough to, you know, pass the class or do the task or whatever. And then, have notes or something that I could refer back to. But I have learned how to zone out without completely zoning out. Okay. But normally what it looks like when you have, your general kind of ADHD, especially when it comes to jobs, is starting a task and not finishing. I am really good at starting a specific thing and then starting another specific thing and then starting a third specific thing and then just jumping back and forth between them. And the thing that I'm working on takes 3 times as long to finish. Um, the big one is my brain is really hyperactive when it comes to ideas. Like, it fires ideas at a rate that uh can be overwhelming if I don't sit down and take a deep breath and focus. It will come out like idea after idea after idea, and that normally manifests a lot of times when I'm talking to people and stuff like that. I tell people all the time, I have ADHD, and ideas just kind of flow out of me. They flow out of me rapid fire, and if I interrupt you, it's not me built trying to belittle you or insult you. It's literally how my brain works. I come up with ideas and they got to come out. And more times than not, those interruptive ideas are the ones that, are the ones that are most beneficial. And so that's something I really do struggle with, and something I really do try to focus on as a point of improvement for myself, to not interrupt people as much. Um, the executive dysfunction, yeah, I mean, task management, thinking in a straight line, following instructions straight down the line are not things that I'm really good at. If I could memorize how to do it, that's great. But more times than not, if it involves, do this and then do this and then do this and then do this, it's hard for me to do, especially when it comes to things I'm unfamiliar with. And the imposter syndrome, because part of ADHD is always feeling guilty. You feel guilty for the tasks that you haven't completed. You feel guilty for how your house looks. You feel guilty for um, forgetting to call this person for weeks and weeks on end, and now you think they're mad at you. There's so much residual guilt that you feel as somebody with ADHD for things that aren't necessarily under your control. Um, and there's a part of it that comes with, you have to learn how to forgive yourself for things that are related to the ADHD. It's still your responsibility, and still ownership, and it's still balls that you dropped, but there's a reason for it. And just because you drop a ball doesn't mean that you can't come pick it up. The way that I've heard it is, you're juggling plates. Okay. One plate is your job. The other plate is kind of your family. Okay. You can drop the job and task management ball and it'll be okay. But if you drop the family ball, it will shatter. And then, and so you just got to learn when to put things down, and sometimes when to take the write up or whatever, just so that you can maintain your sanity. The big thing you need to know is that you're not broken. And I talked about this last week, with the RFK stuff, and you'll be seeing some clips from that posting here, because that's one thing I started and I haven't quite finished yet. I'm editing that video. But one thing is, when we talk about neurodivergence and people that have different processing, one of the things that we find is, when people have this different way of processing things, it's really easy to think that you are broken or something is wrong with you and you need to be cured. And that's not the case. Sometimes you just need to be accommodated for it. You're not broken. And ADHD kids are often stigmatized by this feeling that you're broken and something is wrong with you. Inherently, that something is not right with you. And it turns into kind of, it ends up becoming this cross that you end up bearing, because it's one thing to say you don't feel like, it's one thing to say you are not broken. It's a different thing to believe that you're not broken. And so there are times where I still sit there and, like, sometimes I wish my brain did think in a straight line, you know, and from the medication standpoint, I was on Vyvanse, and that did give me that ability to think in a straight line a little bit more, but it also shut off my emotions. And so I was basically trading my personality for being able to complete tasks. And that was not a great trade off. Okay. Let's shift the narrative a bit. ADHD is not a curse. It's a different operating system. Just like the difference between Android and iPhone, they run on different operating systems. If you're a computer nerd, there's Windows and Linux, however you want to say it. There's Unix. There's different operating systems, and just because they are different doesn't mean that one is inherently better than the other one. They may be better at different things. Windows is the mass market one that most computers operate on. Apple's ecosystem is plug and play. It's supposed to be something you can just pick up and it just works. You sacrifice a little bit of flexibility with tasks and ways that you do things, but it streamlines everything you do and allows you to work pretty seamlessly as long as you stay within the Apple ecosystem. And like Linux is great if you like to tinker and you like to optimize. A lot of servers Even though they may have Windows computers, they run on Linux operating systems because of the flexibility and they're lightweight. They don't require a lot of resources. So ADHD is just a different operating system. Okay. It gives you some strengths. Some of the strengths it gives me, I'm a creative problem solver. If I have enough time, I can sit there and figure out a lot of different solutions that are outside the box. Okay. Um, I have a different kind of tolerance. I may be terrified of a risk, but I also know if that risk is weighed against, you know, if I'm weighing out the risk versus the reward of not the risk versus the risk of not taking action, um, I'm pretty good at getting things started even when I'm terrified to do it. Okay. Hyperfocus. Hyperfocus is a gift when it is aligned with the task that needs to be done. If there's something that needs to be done and I'm able to slip into a zone of hyperfocus, that thing is going to get done. um, and I will shut out everything to get that thing done. Um, before I stepped out of the residential world, stepped into before I stepped out of the director of residential services job, and stepped into owning my own business. I had to I had to complete a accreditation process for my shelter, and I had to rewrite my employee manual because it hadn't been touched in 4 years before I got there. I had to update a lot of different things and update a lot of our filing system and things like that. There was a lot of very specific, mundane tasks I had, and I was able to lock in and laser focus, and we passed the accreditation with flying colors. I had one of the highest scores, if I remember correctly. I think I had one of the higher scores in the agency for passing this accreditation. And it was my very first time. And I had some major hiccups with that accreditation. I ended up getting reamed by a coworker because I didn't understand what they were talking about in terms of process. And so there was stuff that she wanted me to. I was supposed to review her stuff and give her feedback on things that were supposed to be done and stuff like that. And I didn't know what she was talking about because I'd never been through the process before. And I got completely chewed out by her because it was something I was completely unfamiliar with and nobody told me how to do it. And passion and intuition, I do trust my intuition, and my ability to have intuitive feelings about things I'm passionate about. Okay. It could be a business advantage. ADHD can be an advantage for your business if you place the right support system underneath you. Okay. If you have an ability to manage your tasks or a way to delegate your daily tasks so that they get done, um, and not limit your outcomes. So it can be a benefit. And a lot of times I see people viewing it as this eternal curse that, that's a limiter on their growth. Realistically, what that means is you just haven't found the right lane for you to be successful. Okay. I was fortunate enough to kind of fall backwards into residential youth care when I dropped out of school to start working. I was fortunate enough to fall into a line of work that aligned and allowed me to grow and thrive with ADHD. Now, it wasn't like there weren't growing pains because there were pretty significant growing pains. But once I um, had acclimated to the tasks that are involved with being a residential youth care worker, uh, I was able to thrive in those positions all the way up the ladder. And foolishly thinking that, I don't want to say foolishly because it did end up allowing me to uh, rise past frontline worker to middle management to director. Um, I took a job that was heavily task dependent and less interaction dependent, and I struggled with that for about 2 years. But that also was a benefit because that's where I went and got my diagnosis as an adult for ADHD, because I already had my diagnosis as a kid that was never really honored or paid attention to. I got diagnosed as an adult, and um, it clarified a lot of things for me, and I actually got help. So it can be a business advantage. All right. So There's a couple of different tools that you can employ with ADHD. And I don't want to sound trite. And for me, the easiest way to make sure something gets done is to make it as simple as possible, make it as transparent as possible. Um, when it starts involving multiple steps and multiple sequences, and if we get a little bit too abstract with the application, it's not going to work for me. Um, that's why a lot of business books don't necessarily work for me as a business owner, because like where you're just dealing with abstract concepts as opposed to do this and then do this and then do this. I could deal with ambiguity. I can talk in vagaries. I can be abstract if I need to be. But when it comes to implement this thing, I don't deal well with abstractions. Okay. So I like the tools and frameworks I use to manage my ADHD. I like them to be simple and almost where they are self-explanatory. There's a couple I've employed. One I used when I first started managing my shelter was the one touch rule. That means that if I touch it once, either I have to finish it or delegate it to somebody else. And one, it made me very judicious about the things that I picked up, the things I touched, but also held me accountable for making sure the thing I touched got done one way or the other, whether it was me or whether it was somebody else. And it was a very simple way to manage tasks, because one thing with ADHD is you might start working on a task and then you pick up something else and you start working on that. You pick up something else, you start working on that. And a lot of times it's the forward action without thinking. You're just thinking this task needs to get done. The one touch rule kind of forces you to say, okay, I see this through to the end, or I give it to somebody else and allow them to see it through to the end. Now, the piece that I had to add in was when it comes to delegation, if you don't follow up with somebody, you haven't delegated the task. Delegate, you just handed them something to do. But if you don't follow up on the thing that you delegated to them, seeing if they require anything for it to get it done, if there's any hurdles or barriers they're experiencing, if there's anything you can do to make their completion of this thing easier, that's the follow-up piece. And that's important when you're delegating, especially when you have staff. If I pass something to you, and this is a very real example, I had delegated, because we used to have to do fire checks quarterly. And what that means is for my residential shelter, um, we basically would have to wait till the kids went to bed, pull the fire alarm, run a fire drill, um, have everybody come outside. We stand outside for a few minutes and then everybody go back inside. Like your basic school fire drill. Okay. And we had to do that to be in compliance with the state. And so my supervisor asked me to do it. And I had a lot of other stuff going on. And so I delegated that to one of the managers that worked for me. And what he did was his version of the fire drill was to lie about it and pretend and not pull the thing and say it happened. And so I delegated it to him and he did the thing and he lied. He wasn't necessarily 100% honest about it. He tried to fake it. And since there was no record of a call going out or anything, my supervisor saw it and knew that they weren't necessarily being honest. And the feedback I got was, I asked you to do it because of this specific thing, because this has happened before where we delegate it to him to do and he doesn't do it. And so now you have to come in and do it. And the thing was, I didn't follow up. I didn't follow up with that manager to say, okay, what do you need from me to actually do this? What training do you need? What is the barrier? What's the hurdle that's keeping you from doing this thing? So that's what that is, y'all. If you delegate something, you need to follow up. That needs to be a part of the delegation process. You can't just tell somebody to do it and then not check to see if they need your help with it. Okay. The big three, the rule of three big priorities a day, and writing them down. And those are the three things that you're going to get done that day. I have a variation of this because I used to do the big three Now I just have dedicated days. When I was managing family support workers, I would have delineated paperwork focus days that were just so that I can make sure my staff's paperwork was up to date. I didn't take meetings. I didn't do anything else. I made sure that my notes and stuff looked good. And I made sure that staff paperwork was caught up. And that's what I did during my focus day. And it was a structured time where I did nothing else but focus on that thing. And I would schedule my calendar just for that. Now, if my staff had an emergency in the field, of course I'm going to stop what I'm doing to go help out with that. But when I came back, it was this day is dedicated to getting this stuff done. And so I've taken that as a business owner and implemented that. And so a lot of times when you look at my calendar, and I'm not great with following it all the time, but you will see, okay, this is the day I work on this thing, and this is the day I work on this thing, and this is the day I work on this thing for this client. And so I do have that. I just have changed it up. So I normally have one big priority for the day. Um, Body doubling and co-working. So every Friday I do a body doubling live stream, and it's designed to help you knock out those tasks before the weekend. And it's every Friday around 11:30 or noon ish. Um, I log on and I bring my array of tasks that I need to get done before I go pick the kids up from school, and I power through them. And we work in 10-minute sprints, and then we take breaks and I answer questions in between the breaks. And it's been beneficial for me because I've been able to knock out a lot of stuff. And I think it's beneficial for you. The idea behind body doubling or co-working is this. So a lot of times, if we just have the feeling of somebody else's presence when we're trying to get through stuff, that allows it gives a little boost to our serotonin, gives a little boost to our willpower, and allows us to power through difficult tasks. You know, for better or worse, that is one of the benefits of actually having an office space with other people. When we're all locked in and working, we can kind of feed off of each other's energy. Okay. This is a big one, and I've had to put this in. I just had to drill this one into my staff. Um, Externalize everything. What does that mean? So one of the challenges with the ADHD brain is um, we try to hoard information into our brain and hoard tasks and hoard knowledge and things that we need to know into our brain, and then they fall under the couch. They fall under the couch or drift off the table and everything. So when we try to recall them, we don't recall them the right way because there's so much stuff in there. I've learned to find things that allow me to externalize things so I don't have to remember stuff as much as possible. Setting timers, checklists, to do apps, everything. I've done all of them and they've all been beneficial. When I need to brain dump, when I need to dump my brain out, I turn on my recorder and start talking. When I have a bunch of ideas and I'm just like in an idea generation thing, I will find a way to offload those ideas. And so I was a sticky notes addict. I use voice notes, I use whiteboards, I use Trello boards. I use a lot of different tools to dump my brain out and wring it out so that I did not have to carry around a lot of information in my brain at any given time, because that stuff can overwhelm you when you try to carry around too much in here. And so I would outsource it as much as possible. My phone, all I got to do is give a command on my phone and tell it to remind me to do X, Y, and Z at this time, and it will do it. And I don't have to think about it. Okay. There's so many tools out there for you to use as an ADHD brain, y'all. There's so many tools. Um, don't be afraid to use them. Don't feel ashamed to use them. Um, and be very wary of systems, because one of the problems when you have ADHD is there's so many different systems. There's task management systems of all stripes out there in the world, and they look good on paper. But what happens is you fall down the rabbit hole of doing these task management things, and you get caught in the weeds of the implementation of it as opposed to it managing your tasks. That's what happened with the get things done method for me. I got so caught up in the folders and the folders and the folders and the folders and how the folders worked and what I was supposed to do with the folders and what's supposed to go in this folder and that folder. And oh my God, I put it in this folder and I got to pull it out. And hey, did I do this at the beginning of this time frame so that I have all my folders up to date? It turned into a mess because I got so caught up in the implementation of it and the novelty of buying new folders and having a new operating system to manage my tasks that when it came to implementing it, I had no reserves left. And I ended up confusing myself a lot with that specific way of doing things. And so you got to be very careful. A lot of times it's about finding a system that sounds good and then making it fit you and your personality and the way you actually work. Here's the thing, y'all. You can succeed without being organized as long as it works for you. And I think a lot of times, especially when we are working with others, we really do get caught up in how others perceive our workspace, how others perceive how we do. How do you find anything in here? I know where it is. Okay. Um, you know, worrying about how does my office look when somebody comes in as opposed to is my office functional for me? Now, if it's dysfunctional for you and you can't find the stuff and it puts you in a panic or anxiety mode, that's something different. Then you actually do have to organize it a bit. But just organizing just so that you, for appearance's sake, is something that a lot of ADHDers do just to mask the symptoms. And it can lead to frustration because, I organize this thing and now I can't find the stuff that I need when I need it. You don't have to be 100% organized. Okay. You just got to remember the stuff that's important and use the tools that are available and don't try to feel like you have to carry all this crap around in your brain. Okay. Build a system around you. We just talked about this. Build a system around you instead of forcing yourself into somebody else's system. I do think the getting things done method could actually work for me, but there are aspects of it that do not align with how my brain works. And so it was figuring out the way that works best for me because I haven't revisited it. And it may be something I can pick up and do, but I have other means and other methods of getting tasks done. And you're not behind, you're just on a different timeline. Yes, you still have to work with deadlines. Okay. And they are a natural consequence of existing in the world we exist in. There's always a deadline that you have to meet, whether you're working for yourself or working for somebody else. But make sure that you understand how your time aligns with that deadline so that you know when you're going to need to start and when you're going to need to finish so that you can turn in the thing that you need to get done and work the way that makes sense for you. Don't let somebody micromanage the way you work. I ran into that managing my shelter, specifically with a supervisor that should not really have been my supervisor. When I took over my first management job and my first shelter that I was managing, I did not know that the original manager of that shelter, it was on maternity leave, and they had not informed her that they were basically having me come in and redesign her entire program while she was gone. And that set us on a collision course. And then they decided, well, now we're going to make her your supervisor. And now I'm in her crosshairs because there's still some residual anger from how I altered her program without her permission. And I had kind of been set up for failure with that piece of it. I think there was some other stuff going on, to be quite honest, that I wasn't quite as sure or aware of that happened behind the scenes, but it is what it is. And I dealt with somebody that was micromanaging me, but micromanaging me the wrong way, if that makes sense. I was getting written up for doing things that were in the training manual. And it was because she was working off of an old training manual that was out of date, and I had just come out of training. And so I had the new stuff and she had the old stuff, and I was getting written up for that. I was getting written up for things that I hadn't even been trained on. All three of us as supervisors were constantly getting feedback and written up for things that we had never really officially been trained on. And it didn't happen until we didn't get the training on it until after the fact. And then when we got the training, it wasn't in alignment with what this specific supervisor or manager or program director thought, because she was working off the old script as opposed to the new stuff that they were teaching and training. That's actually how, when I got my performance review, I challenged every aspect of it, because I did point out I got written up for stuff that I had never been trained on. And then when I did get trained on it, I got written up because my manager, my supervisor, hadn't been trained on the new way that they were doing things. It was expecting me to do things the old way, when it flew in the face of what was currently being trained. And so when I got my performance review, I was able to defend myself a little bit on that aspect and get it redone. Essentially, because of there are some balls that got dropped. But anyway, long story short, the micromanagement she took was trying to force me to work her way on my tasks that I had to get done. And it was a unique conundrum, because I was the one that was there at night. I was the one that ran the program at night. She was not. And so she's trying to armchair quarterback a shift that she's never worked. And it did not work out. I wasn't, like I said, I got a promotion. She's the one that got fired. Is what it is. You're not behind. You're just on a different timeline. You're not broken. You just process differently. I need you guys to internalize this message here. Okay? Because a lot of times, when we are dealing with ADHD, it's really easy to fall into despair, because you're surrounded by normal people and you want to be normal just like them. And it can be a very punishing thing. And so this live stream is more encouragement. I'm probably going to hop on with the interim live stream, maybe Wednesday-ish, to talk about, marketing with ADHD as a business owner. But I wanted to give you guys and do the encouragement to kind of frame what this channel actually is. This channel, and this platform, and wherever you're watching this, I do want this to be a resource for professionals and business owners with ADHD. A place where we can safely discuss our successes and things that we need to work on without feeling like we're being judged or lectured to. A lot of times when you're dealing with ADHD, you do deal with a lot of people that, for better or worse, judge you. How many times have you heard, he could do the work, she could do the work, they're just being lazy? Stuff like that. Those little things, those little barbs, those little jabs do accumulate in a lifetime. And so I wanted to create this space as a place for business owners, entrepreneurs, and professionals with ADHD, where we can come and get information. I can give you what I know about managing businesses and what I know about marketing strategy and stuff that I've worked with great success with other businesses. I can share it and show that how I implemented it around my ADHD and made it work for me. And so that's what the vision is for the Unstuck sessions. And it's a place where we can give focus. Okay. A place where we can give and get focus, where we can lock in on specific actions that we can take, and share resources that we have and things like that. And so, that the Unstuck sessions is really about it's structured problem solving for ADHD brains. How to find the one big problem that is log jamming and blast through it so that we can go downstream and attack all the other smaller problems that are out there. That's what the Unstuck sessions is. So if you want to get in contact with me, my email's on here. It's mel@isellwords. I'm going to be back probably Wednesday, I'm thinking, with a live stream specifically. about task management for ADHD, or not task management. I already done that one. Marketing management for ADHD, and how to market yourself as this business owner with ADHD. Um, and some of the stuff that I've learned and some of the tips and things and tools that I deploy to make things happen. I do have an entire toolkit that's kind of a plug and play thing that I've been working on. And so hopefully by Wednesday I can announce it officially and tell y'all how to access it. And it's a packet, a kit of stuff that is templates and things like that, so that help you write social media posts and ads and things along those lines. So that you can take some of the operational overhead, some of the thinking overhead out of getting the task of marketing yourself done. Because I know marketing sounds like this creative endeavor and it's exciting. It sounds exciting for ADHDers, but it can instantly become an overwhelming slog if you aren't careful. And one thing I will tell you that is kind of a spoiler, but I want y'all to hold on to this. As a business owner, ADHD or not, you will get sick of your marketing message well before your client even sees it. And so the bright shiny objects syndrome with ADHD can absolutely be brutal in that regard. But understand that just because you're bored with this specific thing, my bobber, doesn't mean that your target client has even seen it yet. So anyway, that's all I got. I do appreciate y'all's time. Thanks for sitting there listening to me. I'm gonna try to throw in a midweek episode of the Unstuck session so I can talk about marketing for ADHD professionals. Thanks for tuning in. I appreciate y'all. Love y'all. Talk to y'all later. Peace.